All right, everybody. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Ward 8 family. Welcome to the Ward 8 Democrats November 2025 meeting. I cannot believe we are done with 11 months of this year. It's been just flying by, right? So much has happened this year. I feel like we've been on some type of a tailspin. I don't know. It's been wild, but this is our November meeting. I'm Troy Dante Presswood. I'm the president of the Ward 8 Democrats, and I'm officially calling this meeting to order. I want to thank you all for spending part of your Saturday afternoon with us on the weekend before Thanksgiving. I know folks have holiday prep going on. They're running errands. They have some family obligations. Life is what we say lifing. But this conversation matters because we want to get ahead of the curve on the fiscal year 27 budget. And we want Ward 8 to walk into next year with a plan, not reacting at the last minute as we've unfortunately had to do this year because we were without a council member. So we have a council member in the seat right now. Let's make sure that we are utilizing that office and utilizing our skill set, which we want to learn about today, so that we can advocate on behalf of what we need here in Ward 8. So thank you all for joining us. I also know that we have some friends from other parts of the city with us as well. So thank y'all for tuning in as well, whether it's here on Zoom or it's on our YouTube page. We appreciate you being here. So you made it. You are here. Now click like and click share and help spread the word. Invite your neighbors to join us live here on the Zoom or, like I said, on YouTube. They can also watch this presentation later on YouTube if they did not get a chance to join us here live. Follow us on Ward 8 Dems at Facebook, on X, and on Instagram. You can use the hashtag Ward 8 Dems as well as Ward 8 Votes. We're about to get back into voting season, so you can use that hashtag again, Ward 8 Votes, to join in on the conversation. Now, before we get into today's session, I want to briefly reflect on last month's meeting. And I want to show just a slide from that because we had a really cool presentation with our good friend over at the State Board of Education. This is a little bit of video here from that meeting. Let me see, is it playing? I don't know if it's playing. I don't think it's playing. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so that's Ward 8 School Board Representative LaJoy Johnson Law, who joined us in October for a really good discussion. She talked about some of the things around helping to push for new policies to get all of our teachers certified to teach special education. LaJoy has been very open about her daughter's struggles with special education, and she believes every teacher should be able to teach that and so, or have certification in special education. So she talked a bit about that. She talked about the new graduation requirements that she and Dr. Jacques Patterson, also from Ward 8, who's school board president this year, how they're working together on a plan to modify those graduation requirements, not to soften them, but to help ensure that there are multiple pathways toward graduation. And of course, she mentioned very clearly that this was an effort to also help those who are disabled to get their high school diploma as well. So it was a really good conversation. If you didn't get a chance to check it out live, you can check it out on the replay. Again, it's on our YouTube channel at Ward 8 Dems, Ward 8 Democrats is the YouTube channel. You can go there and check us out. Check out that conversation. It's really good. And she answered questions as well from the public. Oh, she also mentioned the recess at the Capitol. And that was earlier in the springtime. And again, they did it a few more times after that. They worked with a few groups like Free DC and some others to go up there on the Capitol to try to get dollars restored. That was back when, that CR that they passed basically took $1 billion out of our budget, and that had an impact on our schools. And so she talked about how the recess at the Capitol, those 700 families and young people who went up on the Capitol and said, well, listen, since you're cutting money from our budget, then we're going to come up here and to sort of hang out, have recess on the Capitol. And she said that idea was largely birthed out of Ward 8. So just shout out to her, shout out for all that she does. She's going to be coming in periodically to talk about updates and how we can help her with her work down at the State Board of Education, but of course in the Wilson building, and of course with the mayor in terms of getting legislation passed and approved that will strengthen our educational delivery systems here in the district. So today we're going to carry that same energy. We're going to be asking hard questions, planning early, and making sure that Ward 8 isn't an afterthought in next year's budget. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. My treasurer is not here. Let me just double check because he did text me and tell me he was not going to make it in time. So I just want to double check. And no, he's not. So we would have moved naturally to approving that budget or approving our financial report. We don't have to do that. But I do and will pull up this slide here uh, because Daryl would want me to tell you there are ways to engage with us. You can scan that QR code and it'll take you to learn more. You can also go to our website as well, and you'll see something similar there, but you can also scan this QR code and learn more about how you can engage with the Ward 8 Democrats. All right, I'll stop there. Okay. Do have to let you know that, last month we also welcomed our new board configuration. We welcome our new recording secretary, Tion Jones. He and I and all the rest of us, we need you. And I know that we say this all the time, and I'm still happy to always ask, but I want to make sure that people know there are ways to engage with us and with your talents as well. We are looking for people to join our committees or to serve as leaders in these various committee areas, programming, issues and legislative affairs, our seniors, membership, public relations, fundraising development, youth engagement, special events, precinct captains, and just basic volunteers. We need you, especially as we get ready to go into a new election season, so that we can just spread out and make sure we're engaging all of the voters in Ward 8. And this is perhaps most important because we may be voting differently in 2026 in the June 16th primary of next year. So this is especially important why we need to make sure we're staffed up and have a full list of volunteers, full team of volunteers ready to work with us. So if any of these areas appeal to you, send us your resume or your bio to info@ward8dems.com. Info@ward8dems.com. Screenshot that so that you have it. You know how to get back to it. You say, Troy says something about public relations, something about fundraising, something about seniors. This is what I said. So screenshot it. You can shop it later, but shot it now. And that way you can refer back to this and, of course, the email address on there, which is info@ward8dems.com. Okay. All right. So I've walked us through all of those things. So now let's talk about what we're here. Let's bringing us all here together today. We brought in two experts to help us deal with the DC budget. They deal with the DC budget every single day, one from inside the government, one from outside the government. Our guest today is Jennifer Budoff. She is the budget director for the Council of the District of Columbia. She's been here before, and we're happy to have her back. And then Kate Coventry. She is the deputy director of legislative strategy for the DC Fiscal Policy Institute. They've been here before as well. And we're happy to have both of them back as well. What we'll do is talk a little bit about the budget process, how the council reviews this budget. Right now, we're going into something called agency performance seasons and hearings. And so what does that mean? And then how do we then get to the budget hearings, which come up next year. And why is it called 27? And here we are still in 25. I know Jennifer can answer that for us. And then also we want to talk about how early community engagement and involvement, like we're trying to do today, can actually change the final outcome. At least that's the piece I'll be talking about with Kate. So you are here. Make sure you're letting folks know to hop on now. All right. So, because listen, Ward 8 has been shortchanged for far too long. So, today is about understanding that process and how to get our priorities on the table. So, Jennifer, thank you for joining us. Like I said, you've been here before. You've also seen many different versions of the budget over the years. You've seen the lean years, you've seen the milk and honey years. I don't know. You tell me what type of years we're moving into toward now. You worked under various mayors, of course, and various councils, and under different crises and surpluses, like I said. So we want to just help Ward 8 residents understand the council's role and what they should prepare for and how they can influence the final product. So welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Troy. And I'm really happy to be here with the Ward 8 Democrats and also with my good friend Kate Coventry. We've worked together for many, many years, and she's a really great advocate to be presenting with today.
Glad
So,
to have both of you.
thank you. So I thought I could just do a brief overview of the process, how to participate, how to advocate, and then, open it up for questions. So, who am I? I'm Jen Budoff. I am the council's budget director. I've been in this position for 15 years. And it just goes by very, very quickly. Just how Troy was saying, how the year went by quickly. The past 15 years have gone by very quickly. Um, I head up the council's budget office, and we are a council-wide office. We work with all 13 council members on their issues, advising them on cost estimates of bills, helping create the annual budget, advising on fiscal issues throughout the year. So let me go over some key milestones and how you can best participate in the process. So we anticipate that the budget will come down from the mayor on April 1st this year. That's a Wednesday. April 1st, and we'll start a 70-day clock. And it's actually a 56-day clock because the budget needs two votes 2 weeks apart. So the big vote on the budget will likely be on May 27th or May 28th. We haven't decided yet. It'll be the Tuesday or Wednesday after Memorial Day. And we will determine that we will be voting on the exact dates on the first Tuesday in December. I was just looking at the calendar. Because, I mean, this is great that you guys are doing your budget forum early this year, but sort of a downside is I don't know the exact dates. So the first step in the budget process is that, each council committee will look at their portion of the budget and propose changes to be voted on by that committee. Every committee holds hearings on every agency. And once that schedule is determined, you'll be able to find it on the council's website, as well as on my office's website. So the council's website is dccouncil.gov. And my office's website is dccouncilbudget.com. Yeah. So once every committee just votes on and marks up the proposed changes to the mayor's budget, those proposed changes are sent to the chairman, who will discuss them with council members over a period of a few weeks, and then he will propose his budget for consideration by the full council. And then members of the council may propose amendments to the chairman's budget. which would get voted on by the full council. And then the council takes two votes 2 weeks apart on the chairman's budget. There are a lot of ways to participate. You can, and this is the best way to engage at this point in the process is advocate for advocate with the mayor. The mayor has the budget right now. The mayor is really starting up her budget process right now. She's going to start doing her budget review team meetings in December. This is where the mayor's budget director meets with all of the district's agencies to talk about what their budget needs are, um, how much money we anticipate we'll have for the coming fiscal year, any new initiatives that an agency wants to do for the coming fiscal year. So if there is something that you want or the Ward 8 Democrats want to advocate for, now is the time to get that idea in front of the mayor. Um, and if you can convince the mayor to include something in her budget, and then continue and let the council know that this is something that Ward 8 wants, there's a very high likelihood that it will actually remain in the budget. The council's part of the process, to advocate the relevant committees, once the council receives the budget, by visiting council member offices, testifying at hearings, so on and so forth, to convince a committee to incorporate something into their budget. I always say it's really good to find a champion on the council, someone who will champion your idea, because they can advocate for it in meetings with different members, meetings with the chairman, and it's always good to have an actual member who is behind what you're trying to do. But as with everything, whatever we advocate for, whatever the Ward 8 priorities are, they need to be paid for. So you would need to, we need to have an understanding of how much things will cost. And we have to pass a balanced budget. So, that's always a consideration. And why don't I just, at this point, it's my recommendation is to focus your advocacy on the mayor. She's the one who is pulling together her budget right now. And then, later in the process, come to the council. So why don't I just leave it there? I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you for letting me speak.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I want to just pull up this slide here just to make sure that people know who's talking. Again, that was Jennifer Budoff. She's the budget director at the DC Council. And now I want to pull in Kate Coventry, who is the deputy director of legislative strategy at DC Fiscal Policy Institute. Thank you, Kate, for joining us as well.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely. You should be able to.
It says that sharing is not turned on, so I'm sending a request.
And you shall receive.
Okay.
So, Kate, I think, so the way I think I want to, and thank you again, Jen, for that sort of, I think, big picture look at the process, and of course for helping us to understand that this is really the time to turn our work toward the mayor's agencies. I want to circle back after Kate speaks about, the performance overviews that I think are going on right now at the council and how that's also another way to do that. But first, I want to just, of course, welcome Kate. And like I said, you guys have presented with us before. You always bring research receipts, actually. And so we're grateful to have you back here to help our community understand those needs. I know you're about to show a slide. I wonder if you could also, as you're showing your slide, to level set around how, like what Jennifer said, that we need to really be focusing on the mayor. Like what would be the best strategy to do that?
Okay, I have that in my presentation, so I'll
Right.
get that. Okay, thanks everyone. This is my first time here, though. Other DCFPIers have been here. I'm Kate Coventry. I'm the Deputy Director of Legislative Strategy, which essentially means I manage our advocacy and budget work, and my policy focuses on homelessness. I'm also a member of the district's Interagency Council on Homelessness. So DCFPI's mission is to shape racially just budget, policy, tax decisions by centering Black and Brown communities in our analysis, our research, community partnerships, and advocacy efforts to advance an anti-racist, equitable future. We believe the district can be a place of shared abundance and collective liberation where everyone has what they need to thrive. So just a couple backgrounds for anyone who might be new to this process. The last couple of budgets have backtracked on progress in critical areas to DCFPI, which I also believe probably are critical issues for many Ward 8 residents. Backtracked on housing, some backtrack on healthcare, backtracking on pay equity fund, although the council didn't end up restoring that. So we have had some very tight budgets recently. We're in deeply uncertain times. So what we need to be doing as a city is protecting the people that are most vulnerable. We need strong leadership to help us weather this storm, and it will take all of us to ensure the leadership we need because it is us who keep our leaders accountable. So there's some major threats that I want to get down on paper just so people can kind of get a good context. One is that Congress is interfering all the time now, all the time, interfering with legislation, interfering by making threats that if we do pass certain legislation, they won't like it. Anyway, they're pains in the neck and everywhere else. Revenues have been falling, local revenues, largely due to federal layoffs. The federal employees are 25% of the district's workforce. And while the shutdown agreement did reverse some layoffs, which is great, there were significant layoffs that were not affected, and we are anticipating future layoffs. We've got better federal budget cuts that have been passed, but we haven't felt the effect of yet, like cuts to SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, cuts to Medicaid, health insurance for people who need it. And then we have some ongoing threats to the safety net that haven't really, they've made threats, but they haven't followed through yet. So for example, there's talk in the administration that they only want housing assistance to last for 2 years, which is really the most ridiculous idea practically I've ever heard in my life, because many people, it's very expensive to live here. And if you're dealing with health problems or mental health problems or domestic violence, you probably need more than 2 years to get all those things addressed. So if that happens, there's going to be mass chaos because we've got a lot of individuals and families who have housing choice vouchers that are funded by the feds, and it's possible those vouchers will be turned off. We're not sure what's going to happen, but that's the worry. The executive order on encampments, beautification, and crime, and the occupation by the National Guard and the occupation by other federal forces. While there are many things that are wrong with those two things. What I want to flag in the context of this presentation is that these things have budget costs. Clearing encampments involves DC staff, and that has costs. Going around with federal ICE employees is also staffing and also a cost, and it's not clear yet how much the district is paying. And the estimate on the federal side, it's more than $1 million a day. And then just flagging, the issue that created the shutdown, that the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits could expire. I mean, if you go and look at the marketplace now, they are not in effect. They're anticipating they're not going to be in effect, and that's going to affect health coverage for more than 20 million people in the country and a lot of DC residents. Particularly want to flag that small business owners and people who are self-employed are particularly at risk because they don't have another option other than the marketplace. So in DC is facing a budget squeeze. Surplus is how much money we end the year with. We've had lower surpluses recently. Rising costs, which we're all just facing. Inflation is high. We have reserve funds. These are the funds we have for rainy day. Those haven't been filled from being taken during the COVID crisis and the resulting recovery. There's a huge spike in demand for safety net programs. People are losing their jobs and they're turning to the safety net. And then this is a new thing in that usually when the district does a budget, it does this year's budget and then out into the 3 to 4 years in the future. And this year, the mayor zeroed out funding for certain things or made huge cuts that we're going to face in 2027. So rather than having these programs already budgeted, the mayor is going to have to find funding for them. That's the Pay Equity Fund, which is pay for childcare workers, temporary assistance for needy families. That's cash benefits for people with children, Healthcare Alliance. That's healthcare coverage mostly for immigrants, including those who are here legally. Many legally present immigrants are not allowed to get on Medicaid. And then the per pupil student funding formula is not fully funded, which is a huge gap. So these are all the things the mayor or council will have to find money for if they want these programs to continue to meet the needs of the people who are in them. So remember, budget is a statement of values. How we raise revenue and making spending pressures matter. And as a resident, your voice matters. So I'm going to do a little bit on how you can get involved. So DC leaders are likely going to need to raise revenue. There will likely not be enough because the budget has been so tight, enough revenue to meet pressing human needs. So we want to keep programs and services whole, and we also want to strengthen the resilience of our economy, which is investing in our workers and residents. So some tax ideas that DCFPI will be pushing along with our partners at the Just Recovery Coalition: raising tax rates on capital gains, that's profits from selling assets, increasing taxes on mansions, homes valued at over $1.5 million, income taxes for those making over 500,000 or 1 million, and then a business activity tax, which is really a way to make sure our local businesses get a fair shot and are not paying more taxes than larger companies are. So how to influence the budget? That's my job. And I find it actually quite fun. So a quick list of things you can do. You can write letters or emails. You can pass resolutions, like, the Ward 8 Dems could do a resolution on an issue asking people to put money towards it. Meet with council members and staffers, join coalitions and their actions, and you can testify. So just briefly, who the decision makers are. The mayor proposes the budget. She hosts budget forums, which are these sessions with the mayor's budget director and many of her senior staff, where they ask residents what's important to them. There are also, just a flag for you, is usually a specific budget forum for senior citizens. So that's something to keep a lookout for. I'll say the mayor is harder to influence. Like the council members, I know how to find them and reach them pretty easily. And the mayor has has a public schedule, but it usually only comes out same day. So if you need to talk about the mayor for something, you might be waiting for a few days to try to find her in person. Council members are usually easier to find, and they have to leave their offices to go to the bathroom. So they will be wandering the Wilson building, and you pretty much usually can chat with them at least briefly. For council, I encourage people and organizations to schedule meetings and share thoughts via testimony. I want to flag that you can swing by unannounced. We call these walk arounds, but I call them wait arounds, because what happens is usually you can speak to someone, but you might have to wait for a bit. So, and the big thing I'll say about that is make sure you have a handout, because they're going to be meeting with a lot of people and people who may have very similar asks. And so if they have a document that says, this is what we're asking for, this is why it's important, both they can keep track that you've made the ask. And then if they're going to make that ask of their colleagues, then they have the information and they don't have to figure out how to get back in touch with you to get the information that they need to support the idea. The chief financial officers puts out the revenue forecasts, which that says how much revenue we're going to collect. We can't really influence that process, at least not in any way we've found. Occasionally we push back on CFO decisions, like if, you know, if they're saying something's going to cost a lot of money, we don't really think that's true. And we think we have evidence from other places that it won't cost that much. But most of the time, we can't really influence the CFO that much as outsiders. Council Office on Racial Equity, they do amazing racial equity assessments. I totally recommend reading them. Like, I've learned so much. They're super useful. But they don't assess the budget. And I think that decision was made because the budget was so big, but it's a huge for you know, a small team to tackle. But we would suggest, well, every year do 20 programs or 15 programs, you know, and then the next year do 15 other programs, because a lot of the things we fund year after year after year, and it would be great to have a racial equity impact on the things we spend our money on. And then Congress, unfortunately, y'all, gets final approval, and that is hard to influence. I think the biggest thing, if there's drama on our budget, which there was not this year with Congress, is, you know, that's the time to reach out to people who are not DC residents, who you know, right? People who actually have Congress, people who can vote. So this is tips for meeting with council members, tips for testimony. I just want to tell y'all, you don't need to know very much to come testify. This isn't Congress, right? Congress invites people, and there's some sort of expectation that these people are often experts. Council, anyone can sign up to testify, and you are an expert in whatever you're probably coming to speak to. So don't be intimidated. I mean, the thing is, they know a lot, but they probably don't know a lot about your issue, and that's what you're there to do, is tell them about their issues. So, you know, personal background, like, you know, I have a friend who testifies, and her brother-in-law was homeless. So she mentions that, like, why the issue is important to you, or, you know, if you're talking about schools, that your kid is in a DCPS school that's facing a certain cut or needs a certain enhancement. So tell the story about like why it's important, why it matters, and then offer suggestions. So, you know, maybe you don't just need funding, but you think there are some program improvements that are needed. So you could talk about that, you know, or the program, you could just say, oh, this program would be more efficient if, you know, it had this kind of staffing or this kind of funding. So yeah, and then really just make sure you're clear on what you're asking the council member to do. Testimony is mostly the same thing, but the one thing is to make sure you're at the right hearing. And I know that sounds like obvious, but it's not always obvious. So the council is split up into committees with oversight in different areas. So there's a human services committee, there's a health committee, there's a transportation and environment committee. Now, you say you're coming to talk to me about identification. That it could be a Department of Human Services issue because people experiencing homelessness struggle to find IDs, but it could be a DMV issue if DMV is like not following their own policy or giving homeless people a hard time or whatever. So if it's a DMV issue, you want to make sure you get it in front of Charles Allen, who's the chair of public safety. The chair of transportation and the environment. And you might want to also testify at DHS because your primary interest is in this situation is helping people experiencing homelessness. And you might want to flag for Councilmember Fruman that part of the ID problem lives in this other agency, as an example. Again, you know, greet yourself. We always thank them for the opportunity to testify. Clear presentation of asks and personal stories and facts. Restate your ask and offer to answer questions. Now, I also will flag that many council offices will let you testify in a panel, which means you and 2 or 3 or 4 other people would all speak at the same time and then answer questions at the same time. Now, what this might be good is, say, on like a temporary assistance for needy families. Well, the lawyers have this perspective. So, you know, you put one lawyer on the panel, you put one TANF parent on your panel, you put one TANF provider on your panel, and you pick somebody else. And that way you will probably have the right expertise to answer questions. Now, I don't do this all the time, but I definitely do it if you're talking about a complicated issue or an issue that has like a bunch of different aspects to it. What to do now? Jen's right. Try to influence the mayor. That's harder than the council. I think getting good press, you know, getting press on your issue right now is helpful. Definitely targeting the mayor with actions is helpful. Ask for a meeting with your ward council member who's Trayon White, the at-large council members. The chairman has the most power. It's harder to get a meeting with him, and usually only give you 20 minutes. So just so you know you have the right expectations, but he has the most influence. You can also start engaging by signing the Just Recovery DC petition to ask leaders to raise needed revenue. And then you can email me or put your name and email in the chat if you want to work on revenue this budget by calling or emailing council members. And then this is the useful resources section. I really, really want to hold up the website that Jen mentioned. Her budget office, her website is the best website on the budget. So there are links I think these slides will be sent out and there'll be links so you can get there. I'll say that if you're writing something official, like a DC FPI publication, we will go to the source documents in the formal legislative management system. But if you just are wanting to understand the budget and see all the documents in one place, Jen's website works the best for that. Sometimes the official version has not been uploaded. That's why I have to go to the limbs. But just saying that, like, as a newbie and as an oldie like me, that website is super helpful. And then some partners have like how to testify resources here. DCFBI also has some resources about how to testify and just like a budget 101 so you can kind of understand the process. And then Just Recovery and Fair Budget are two groups doing budget advocacy on a wide number of issues, which is why I'm elevating them over other partners. And then I'm a resource. This is my information. I'm just like a Ghostbuster, but I'm a budget buster. So that's it for me. Happy to answer questions.
Wow, thank you so much. That was such a great presentation, Kate. And one of the things that you mentioned, which is so hilarious, which is that, it's really easy to get to the council members because they have to go to the bathroom, as opposed to the mayor who can just go to the restroom inside of her suite.
To be clear, I
Um,
do not stalk them at the restroom, but
I don't
they
know.
move around the building so you can find them.
I don't know. I
The
gotta.
other thing, I should flag one other thing. If you're really having a hard time finding a council member, look at the council schedule and look at the hearing schedule. And if they're hosting the hearing, if they're the chair of the committee, you can usually find them at their hearings.
Got it. Folks, if you have questions for our guests, please go ahead and drop those in the chat. We did get some questions in advance, and so I'm shifting through those right now to see which ones make the most sense for our conversation here today. A lot of the questions, though, that came in were not specifically about how to advocate for what you want. It's a lot of things about, um, different questions about can we get the mayor to do this? Can we get a councilman to do that? Which are all great questions, but not quite germane to the conversation. But hopefully something you're hearing here today sparks the next step in what you want to get folks to do. And so I want to ask a few questions here. And again, let those questions come in, folks, and we'll look at those. But oftentimes, so the Ward 8 Democrats for the past, I want to say 5 years, we have submitted and Jennifer, I know you're often on the other side of our emails. We've submitted a budget request, a budget, letter that outlines a survey, which we're going to launch here today in just a few moments, from the public that talks about what their priorities are, that talks about specific programs or initiatives that they would like to see done or improved. But we often get pushback from council members who say, well, how much does this thing cost? Right? To your point, Jennifer, like everything has to be balanced, right? And so, what's a great, and certainly Kate jump in on this, but what is, how do residents not only advocate for an initiative or some type of program or a fix in something, but what's the best approach to bring a dollar figure to that so that they can help the council member advocate for it?
That's a great question. So, I like to tell people or advocates when they come through, they should talk to me about the policy proposal and to talk to me about the idea, and we'll figure out how much it will cost. Um, so, my recommendation is, advocate on the idea. Um, and you can work with council member staff. Council member staff can get in touch with us. Um, and we can, come up with a rough order of magnitude to achieve the policy goal. But it's I think, sometimes saying that you don't know how much something you need to know how something is going to cost um may be a way to deflect. Um Maybe I shouldn't be saying that.
You want me to jump in, Jen?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so sometimes council members will
Wait,
say,
wait, wait. We want to hear the real, we want to hear the real raw
all right, go,
Jennifer
Jen.
here.
No,
No, no,
no, no,
no,
no,
no,
no.
no.
Kate,
No,
Kate,
no.
Kate will give the real raw.
I know.
So,
I
I'm
want to,
I'm
and
limited.
I want to be clear. I don't want to get anybody in any type of trouble. And Jennifer, I definitely don't want to do that with you because you're generous with your time with us today. But I think we understand what you're putting down. Go ahead, Kate. Hop
I'll
in there.
just say that sometimes council members will point to cost as a reason, and sometimes they'll do that before they actually know how much something costs.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend is, if you can, reach out to a partner who might have some idea about costs. Like, you could call me and I could say, we know something or we don't. Right. And then the other thing you can do, and maybe, and I'll just say sometimes for your own strategy, you want to know what something costs, right? Because you want two things or you're trying to pick between things. So I think having cost data personally is helpful. But the other thing you can do is just like look at other states. It doesn't have to be like a huge amount of information that you're bringing forward. But if you see something is happening in Maryland, you can say, well, it costs Maryland this much. And we have, fewer people. So definitely won't cost more than that. But yeah, like Jen's office does a lot of work, and the council members can ask. So that's how that process works. The CFO also does fiscal impacts, but that's not something that advocates can influence really. But he does the fiscal impact for the entire budget as the mayor has proposed it.
Got it. Uh, Understood. Anything further on that? Because I think that's a question we often, not necessarily from the public, but when we present our letter to and our request to the council that's based on what the public has asked for, they often ask, well, how much, in fact, I don't want to name any names. We got the same pushback on something this past fiscal year.
I'll just
Yeah.
flag that I
Yeah.
think a lot of council members operate in a way of like, there are so many budget asks, there's no way I can fund them all. And so I want an easy way to say no to something, right? It's not to say they don't want to do things, but it's like, I know that they're getting a humongous number of asks that they're never going to be able to reach all those.
Yeah.
So you just want to make the best case you can, because I think they're just like, I can't fund everything. So it's so much easier if I can say this is too expensive or too controversial or too soon. Right. So
Right.
it's
I
like, oh,
mean,
we need to study that more.
Yeah.
we have limited resources, we have very limited resources. We can't do everything. And, when it comes to the council, if we're going to fund something new, we're going to have to cut something else. So that is, the context that we operate in.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Unpack that a little bit more for our viewers
Mhm,
about limited resources. Oftentimes we see that, for example, the Commander Stadium that
mhm,
we gave $1.2 billion
mhm,
toward this year. Also, Monumental Sports, which got
mhm,
500, 600,000 million dollars. Um, and so a lot of times people are unable to, and it's not their fault, right? Because so it just seems like whenever we want to do something big, we do it. Whereas when the small
mhm,
things come, it's like, well, you can't fund E-rap, like what's going on, right? And
mhm.
so I think a lot of times people are not very clear about the two types of budgets that we
Mhm.
have in the district. Can you talk a little bit about that, Jennifer, to help level set people on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the district, when we talk about the budget, as Troy said, it's actually two budgets. Uh, though it's the operating budget and the capital budget. So think about the operating budget as that's how we pay for staff. That's how we pay for paper and pencils. That's how we provide subsidies and contracts, security at buildings, our utility bills to operate government buildings, those books at schools. That's all the operating budget. The capital budget is the money that we borrow for large assets. So it's the money that we use to build roads and schools and stadiums and arenas and ballparks and all of those types of things. Now, on the capital budget, we have to borrow that money, but we have to pay it back. And we pay it back through the operating budget. So so there are connections between the two, but that's sort of the two different and distinct items. So for the stadium, the Commander Stadium, we um, basically rolled over. There was a tax that we levied on businesses that we used to pay for the Nationals ballpark. The Nationals ballpark bonds are about to expire. So the proposal was to take that tax that we levy on businesses and use it to pay for the Commander Stadium. One of the things that we did when it was with the council is, a lot of times we do these economic development projects, and what's the point of economic development? To generate revenue for the district so we can pay for services. But a lot of times with these economic development projects, we give away all of the upside. And then you sort of have to ask yourself, why are we doing this? If I'm giving away all the tax revenue that is supposed to be generated from the economic development. But for the commanders, what we actually did is the tax revenue that's going to be generated from the stadium and that's going to be generated from the mixed use development is actually going to be coming into the district's general fund and be available to be used to pay for government services because we use this other business tax to essentially provide the subsidy to construct the stadium. So that was something that was very important to the council. And when we restructured the deal, when it was in front of us, we did that, as well as we also extracted or renegotiated to receive all of the revenue from the parking garages as well. So I am excited. I am excited about this because it is going to be bringing in pretty significant amount of money into the district's general fund for general government purposes starting in 2030, 2031.
I'll just also flag for folks, it's always easier to find money in the future than it is money today.
That sounds like a bumper sticker.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we should
Mhm.
put that on a bumper sticker. There's another question here about Councilmember Trayon White. Since his return to the council, he does not sit on any committees other than the committee of the whole. And so there's a question about if the work around shaping budgets and outcomes, if that work happens on council committees, and we don't have someone currently on those committees, what is the impact to Ward 8 and how do we overcome that as well? Any of you could take that.
Sure. There's the work that happens in the committees, but you don't have to be a committee member to attend committee hearings, to talk with and meet with the, committee chairs and committee members to advocate for what you want or what your ward wants. I mean, most of that work is just done through personal relationships and personal lobbying and personal advocacy with other members. So yes, while you are at a disadvantage of not by not having a committee, that disadvantage is really just related to the agencies that would be under that committee's purview. But everything else, if let's say you're the head of the transportation committee, you don't have schools under you, you don't have human services under you, all of those things, like anything that you'd like to see in those areas, you're just going to have to advocate with that member that has those agencies under their purview or directly with the chairman himself.
Okay. And it's probably a good idea to also just note that that's when all of us, Jennifer, I know that's not what you would say, but that's when all of us, those of us who are residents, we will step up and
Mhm.
we need to go to those committees and to make our voices known and understood. And I think when they expelled the council member last time, I said, on our channels here that every council member is now our council member. And so even though you have Zach Parker, who's in Ward 5, elected by Ward 5, he is the chairperson over a committee that impacts us here in Ward 8. And so that means we have to show up at those committee meetings as well. We have to testify. We have to use those levers of power to get what is necessary. And so I just want Ward 8 residents to understand that's how that process works. Did we lose Kate? Looks like we lost Kate. Okay. There was a question that came in from Michael. He wanted to ask the question live. Michael, you with us?
That was from an earlier segment. I'd rather not go back.
All right, thank you. So, Jennifer, let me ask you this. This is a question that's come up before too. It's funny. So I love how our folks are here who want to figure out or better understand the how to advocate and how to come together and promote the things that matter to them in terms of the budget. But they're also very curious about just the overall budget process, right? Like what happened when there was a $1 billion cut from the CR? Like what happened? Because I don't know if it landed in a way that everyone could understand thoroughly
Mhm.
that there was a $1 billion cut, at least on paper, but it really was just hanging out, waiting to be restored, and it has since been restored. But then,
Mhm.
I, if you could shed a little bit of light, it'd be great.
Oh, sure. Yes, that is was very confusing even for those of us, inside the government. So as we know, the congressional CR from last congressional continuing resolution that cut money from every federal agency decided to treat the district government like a federal agency, even though we are not a federal agency. We operate like a state, and essentially prevented us from spending roughly $1 billion of our locally generated revenue. So this wasn't money that they were taking from us. It was money that they said, okay, DC, you levy taxes, you collect taxes, you collect your sales tax, you collect your property tax, you collect your parking tickets, all that kind of stuff, but you're not allowed to spend $1 billion of it, which is ridiculous. So, um, luckily, we were able to think creatively and we were able to structure around it. We had, the ability through previous congressional legislation to increase our budget by roughly 6%. locally. So by doing that, we were able to recover around 600 million of that 1 billion. And then this whole, the allowing us to spend 6%, it was actually 6% local funds, but we could spend up to 25% of special purpose revenue funds, which is a different type of tax revenue that we bring in. We're able to shift some money from this pot to this pot, and then we're able, just, a lot of creative accounting so that, and also, hiring freezes and contract freezes and a lot of, and a lot of internal things that we did not want to do. We did not have to plan to do. But at the end of the day, we were able to get through this, creative accounting, you know, pulling back a little, so that we didn't have to do any sort of draconian cuts that we were really worried about.
And okay, so the most recent CR that went through the House, the Senate, the House, and the President signed, that restored what was cut, at least on paper. Is that correct?
Well, it just allowed us to spend at our
Allowed us to spend it.
FY'26
Okay.
levels. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
So essentially, have we been restored, or we are?
I mean, yes. Yes. The best
Okay.
way to say it is yes, because of sort of what we did during the last fiscal year in order to, manage through it. So
And
no money was taken away from us.
okay.
If they didn't allow us to spend it, we still kept it and it's available for future use. But for the most part, we were able to, again, do creative accounting and we were able to access those funds for the most part during FY'26.
Got it. So it really wasn't a removal of those dollars. It was the law that said you can't spend it.
Yes. Yes.
I was today years old when I just realized that, Jennifer. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, no, no,
Okay.
no, no. Yeah, I mean, but that's how it was described in the press, that they cut $1 billion from our budget. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how, but it really was, they cut our ability to spend $1 billion.
Got it. It's almost like how they use they've used laws on the Hill to stop us years ago from doing needle
Hmm.
exchanges, from
Hmm.
doing that initiative, from doing
Hmm.
the marijuana, cannabis
Hmm.
stores,
Hmm.
recreational store. Got it. Okay, I think I follow now. Okay.
Right. And there's a question, where is the money now? It was spent in 25 last year.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Through creative
Right.
accounting, being able to
Hmm.
raise the fund. Right. Yes, someone's trying to speak.
This is Kate. Sorry, I got kicked out, but I'm back, but not on camera because my internet is not great.
Okay, go ahead,
But I
Kate.
wanted to speak just briefly to that committee question
Mhm.
that I missed.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, please.
it sucks. I'm not gonna that he's not on committees.
That the council member White, Trayon White, is not on committees.
It sucks,
Yeah,
and I think but I agree with Jen that most of the work happens after the committee process. But I think what people often get during the committee process is like investments in their ward, right? So you will see, the a ward council member, most of the work, their work is on their committee, but oh, here's some money for repairs to some kind of public feature in their ward, or money for clean teams, or money for that. So I would just be pushing Councilmember White with like the specifics that you want to see. And then I think once the committee process is over, if Ward 8 doesn't feel like it's gotten comparable investment, make that argument to the chairman that you all are losing out because you're not participating in committees, and that there should
yeah,
be an attempt to fund those sort of things in the budget as a whole.
understood. No, thanks for that. I know that the Ward 8 Democrats actually sent a letter to the chairman mentioning why this sucks, to use your phrase here, because we know that a lot of the work, especially around appropriations, start at the committee level. And when you're on the committees, you get to barter your vote. You get to say, okay, I'll vote for this if you vote for that, that type of thing. And of course, with the council member not having a direct committee to do that does complicate things. But again, I go back, I think, to my earlier point, which is that means that we have to be far more intentional about all the different committees and showing up and testifying and leaning on our at-larges and leaning on those committee members. I know we're very tribal about our wards, but honestly, when there is a committee person, that's your council member. If he's a chairperson or she's a chairperson, that's your council member. And I think we have to get out of this idea. I only just do things in Ward 8. I only do things in Ward 8'7" or whatever. It really is. We got to think a little bit more globally than that. And then I think to Jennifer's point as well, which was that, this is also a great opportunity for us to turn our eye toward the mayor and toward those agencies in order to get at least the initial thrust of the things that we want or what we believe we should have in the purview of the mayor. Because and either Jennifer or Kate, y'all can talk about this. And then Michael, I saw you had your hand up, but it went down again, and then it went up and went down. So, but I think it's also helpful if you can just explain why it's difficult for the council to unfurl the budget once it arrives at your desk. You can do things on the margins for sure, but it's difficult for the council to just, basically blow it up and try to put it back together again, which means that a lot of the power on this rests with the mayor.
Right. I mean, part of that is just that we don't have that much time. I mean, we have no more than 70 days, but we have to have our first vote within the first 56 days because we have to have two votes. That's less than 2 months to go through a $20 billion budget. But also part of it is just that, we get a full package from the mayor. Everything has already been spent. And if you think about it, the vast, vast, vast majority of money is spent on just keeping existing programs going, keeping existing employees employed. There's not that much that's actually new. So, a lot of our work at the council is, not just looking at the mayor's enhancements or new programs and figuring out if we want to keep them or not, but most of our work is done looking for efficiencies in existing programs and existing agencies and trying to carve out money that way that we can then use for council member priorities.
I'll just flag that I agree with Jen. The budget is huge. It's a lot of money. It's not very much time. In some offices too, you're dealing with people who are very new, who maybe the council member they worked for had a different committee previously or didn't have a committee previously. So it's not like the way it is on Congress, where the committee staff usually are very long-standing professionals in the area. I also just think, like, just in home services, the number of programs we have, like, I couldn't even count them for you right now. Is how many things you're gonna see. But my big tip, first of all, reach out to us, but not like within 3 days of the budget drop, unless it's super urgent, because all we're doing is trying to figure out. But what I do, you look at the mayor's PowerPoint, you recognize that is propaganda. So it is probably correct, but not necessarily consistent. Like, sometimes she'll highlight a 4-year thing and she'll say we're investing 200 million and she means 200 million over 4 years and sometimes over 1 year. Anyway, read that, because those are the things she thinks she's doing. And then read table 5 in your budget chapter or reach out to us and we will look at table 5. And what table 5 goes over is the changes in the agency. And so, and to realize, like, going back to what Jen said, is a lot of it is stuff we can't move around, right? We've got to pay our people. We've got to make sure our people have health insurance. We have to, there isn't as much money to move around. And the mayor is sort of starting a bit at scratch, right? Obviously, she's got all her recurring stuff, but she gets the first whack at it by proposing the budget, and then the council has to agree that, oh, we're gonna, defund this other thing that she wants to free up money for something else. So it's a higher bar of like having to say like this is not important to us, the council. And I'll just flag that this year we really pushed the chairman to have a conversation about council-wide priorities, because sort of the way the budget process is, it forces people to be very myopic in their first few weeks because their whole focus has to be on doing their committee budget, right? And making sure, the committee is doing oversight and that the agency has what it needs to fulfill its mandates. But then what kind of happens is we're like nearly halfway through before we turn to other bigger issues. And for example, like the committee money moving around is usually under 10 million. A lot of agencies, it's very low amount of money that's moving around. And the big investments, like investments we need in housing or other expensive things, happen once the budget's moved out of the committee process and kind of back into the council as a whole.
Got it. All right. So we're coming to a conclusion pretty soon with our guest today. So if you have a question, a burning question, please either place that in the chat or you can use the raise your hand feature. Could either of you talk about the ease of testifying before the council? Now there is, I think I mentioned last time, a few years ago, I found out you can do a voicemail testimony. And you can also obviously show up, but there's a lot of what we do now is virtual. And that just makes it so much easier because we don't have to necessarily come down to the Wilson building. You can do it from your home. Can y'all each talk about just the ease of that and so that people are not intimidated by this idea, oh, I got to testify. What does that mean? How does that look?
Mhm. Kate, do you want to go first since you
Sure.
testify all the time?
Sure. So the first thing to know is each council member has their own jam when it comes to how they do their hearings. I would say at this point, most are doing hybrid, which means you can join via Zoom or you can join in person. I don't think as many still allow the voicemail testimony. So you should look at the hearing. What's going to happen when the budget comes out is or before the budget comes out, we will get a budget oversight hearing schedule so you can see, and then it will give directions of like how to sign up, much time you have. Different committees give you different amounts of time, just so folks know. Most committees differentiate whether you're representing an organization or a person. If you're representing an organization, the first witness usually will get 5 minutes and everyone else will get 3, but it totally depends on the committee in question, what that council member wants to do. You also can submit written testimony after. I think just remember that at least the chairperson is there for the whole hearing. Maybe they go to the bathroom or they take a lunch break, but they're really there. So with written testimony, I believe the staff read it, but I don't believe it really ever gets to a council member unless it's something big that you've exposed or something else. So I definitely recommend trying to testify either virtually or in person if you can, but written testimony also can work.
Great. Jennifer, anything?
No, Kate's the one to talk about testifying.
So Marcus Batchelor asked an interesting question, which is about doing an independent budget proposal ahead of the mayor or instead of the mayor. Like, can the council do their own budget? And maybe when the mayor does her budget, then there's the clash of the titans, and you sort of figure it out. Is that a possibility?
Sure. So under the Home Rule Act, the mayor has the exclusive ability to introduce a budget. So the council cannot introduce a budget. However, I mean, there has been a lot of discussion about priority setting prior to the mayor's budget. Council members have talked about it. It hasn't happened. I don't know how much more I could say about that, but in terms of there being a introduced council budget, we don't have the ability to do that under essentially our state constitution. But there are a lot of other ways to influence the budget prior to the mayor's submission. And doing priority setting and, council members send letters, those types of things. But, Marcus, I can say that there have been, people talking about this, what you're saying, over the past few years.
I would just add on, you mentioned letters, Jen. Specifically,
Mhm.
most council members do a letter to the mayor on their budget priorities, and it's good if you can get into that letter. But yes, if the council wanted to do something, it'd be symbolic rather than an actual filing of a budget. They could call for, like, we want a budget that houses people and helps small business, and they could do something like that, but it wouldn't be official. And then it's interesting because so much of what we end up doing during the actual budget process is so in the weeds of, like, knowing when that this agency doesn't ever hire on time, or they never use all their vacancies, and that sort of stuff. And that's where we find money for priorities. So I think that level has to be after the budget's released, but I do think they could do some framing and some communicating about what they want to see from the budget as the mayor releases it. Although, I have to say, the other thing to know about the budget, it's a game of chicken, because the mayor gets the first shot, and there's pros and cons to that, right? Because she kind of sets something out, and then you have to argue to get rid of it if you don't want to do it. But sometimes I really believe, and the agencies kind of tell me, well, we know council likes, for example, in the past, ERAP. So we're only going to propose 5 million because we're sure the council will add more. So, and then sometimes council does, and sometimes they don't. And then we end up with no housing vouchers for individuals experiencing homelessness, which is what happened this year.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that, Kate. All right, so just as we wrap up here, in terms of process, and I'll start with you, Jennifer. You mentioned that at this stage in the game, this is really the time to start to engage with the mayor and the mayor's agencies on the priorities or the initiatives or the ideas that we would like to see at this particular juncture, and then we move to the next step and the next step. I just want us to walk through that one more time.
Sure, happy to. So right now, right before Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, the mayor is going to start doing her budget review team meetings with all of the agencies. This is when the agencies start their in-depth conversations on what should be in the following year budget. If there's an opportunity to engage or advocate with the administration at this point to be reflected in these budget review team meetings, that would be, a really fruitful exercise. Starting in January, probably starting right after MLK Day, the council is going to enter into its performance oversight process. And this is when we hold agency performance hearings on every single agency. It's split up by committee. This is also an opportunity to advocate in, all of the ways that I've talked about and all of the ways that Kate presented in her great presentation. Not only, it's not only during budget, but you can also do that during performance too, to really talk about things that have worked, things that haven't worked, personal experiences. Members love hearing personal experiences instead of something anecdotal, about program, agency, policy, something that you've interacted with that's worked well, that hasn't worked well. If you have suggestions on ways to make it better, performance season is the time to do it. That schedule has not been set. It will be set soon. It'll be both on the council's website and on, it should just be on the council's website, dccouncil.gov. And then the budget season, it'll start, fingers crossed, on April 1st. and, go through mid-June and, to engage in all of the ways that we have, set forth.
So my big suggestion is don't reinvent the wheel. If you want to testify on a topic, go look at someone else's website and see, and including DCFBI's, and see what they've said and base it on that. So you're not ever starting from scratch. Definitely suggest either testifying at or both testifying and watching oversight hearings to see what issues come up. It's helpful to know if your program is getting mostly good reviews, mixed reviews, no reviews, bad reviews. That is the time for that. And I also feel like we often in performance oversight are laying the ground for what we want to see in the budget. So sometimes we'll say, this program is doing really well and we want to see it expanded. We won't go into a ton of details about that until the budget oversight, but the two are definitely connected. Yeah, that's what I would have to add. And don't be worried about having to be an expert. You just have to be an expert in your own story if that's what you're telling. And then, you can lean on other partners, right? Like people lean on us to find research and that is our role as research, mostly bring research forward and testimony. But Jen's right. People want to hear personal stories and unfortunately our council is not as economically diverse as I would like it to be. And so, you may be the only person they hear from who's dealt with this particular program or, has a particular insight, given where you live or who you are, the people you interact with. So I think all that is important, and just don't assume that they know. I mean, there was a council staffer who I'm not going to name who represented quite a lot of people who were on TANF. And every time I saw him, I had to explain what TANF was. And I was like, all right, well, that's just my job. I don't care if you remember, as long as you remember well enough to vote yes. So just remember too that the budget is a humongous document with a lot of things in it. Jen's office does a great job in breaking things down, but don't be surprised, especially in a small program, people might not know a lot of details. So yeah, it's just a lot. There's a lot in there. I've been doing this job, I think 14 years, is either 13 or 14, just under Jen, and there's stuff I learn every year. On the budget. So,
and there are things I learn every year, and I think the things that the residents learn every year as well. That's why we have these types of conversations here in Ward 8, and we are just immensely thankful to the both of you for coming in and spending part of your Saturday with us. Jennifer and Kate, I think you've dropped your contact information in our chat. If you haven't, please do so, and then we'll also share it as well on our YouTube page for those who will watch the replay a bit later. And so with that, I do want to just say thank you to you both for being here, and we look forward to engaging you in some way around the budget for fiscal year 27.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
thank you for having me.
And so I just want to quickly go over some of the comments that came in earlier for those who had registered, and just to give you, since we always say, hey, what's your comment or your question? And so some of those comments were certainly about housing and referring to HUD, like how much money was sent back to HUD. I know we had a story recently about DHCD and how money had went back because they didn't spend it. And so what does that look like? What does that mean? Great questions, of course, but I don't know how that helps us in terms of advocating, right? What we need to do now is to understand the process and then get ready to go down and, swarm that Wilson building or hop in on those Zooms and be active for the things that we do care about. And perhaps housing is your jam. And if it's your jam, point to the fact that how we lost some money and how we got to be better. And this is performance oversight season. So this is exactly the time to start speaking up about how that impacted potentially our ward. But ultimately, what we want to do is to make sure everyone knows how to testify for the things they want. It really is how you get things done. You have to be able to go down there and and or sign up and do it over Zoom. And I think, like Kate said, you don't have to be an expert. No one says you have to have a degree or anything like that. What we need and what they need is to hear your story. And everyone's an expert in their story. And so we at the Ward 8 Democrats, we have some templates that we've used in the past that we've prepared for residents to use. We'll make those available in our next email that we'll go out. We'll put up on our website as well after this is concluded, so that you can go there and click on there. We have templates about you to fill in your name here and say what your issue is here, how to transition from that to the next thing, and how to get it all done and said in 3 minutes, because that really is all you got. And so we want to make sure you stay succinct, because we want to ensure that the council hears what you have to say about it. And by the way, you can use the same template to advocate to the mayor and to those agencies as well. And with the large language models, the chat GPTs of the world, you can always use our template and make it work for you for what you want to say and to whom you want to say it. So just make sure that we are using the tools that we have available, because I don't want our ward left behind. I really don't. We try to do this every year, and we make it a little bit earlier every time we do it. And this is the earliest we've had this conversation, as you can tell, because some dates are still in flux. But that doesn't mean that we can't get ready. So when those dates drop, we're ready. There's a question about has the Ward 8 Dems worked with ANCs to create greater unity and consistency across the ward? Okay, that's a interesting question, but the answer is absolutely yes. Some of us are former ANCs, in fact, on the Ward 8 Democrats executive committee. So yes, absolutely. Not just ANCs, but also civic associations. Speaking of ANCs and civic associations, because I made a note of this, nonprofits as well, is that I think what we need is our ANCs and our civics and our nonprofits to say, hey, what do we need here in Ward 8? What, what should we get funded? How much does it cost? We heard about that earlier, how some pushback comes from council members about cost. Like, you got to give us a cost, otherwise I can't do anything with your proposal. So I think this is the time to start to plan for that, and to figure out who we need to lean on and talk to and pull from. We all have expertise in the ward in some way, so let's do that now, and certainly working with our civics and our ANCs, our nonprofits. This is the time to do that. So let's do it. Let's do it. Let's figure out what we need. But we can't work in silos. We literally cannot work in silos. That has not gotten us a lot in the past. We have to work together. Let's see. Starting this conversation early is very important. Thank you for that. There's some other things on here. How does the mayor's budget process works? I hope you understood that or got a sense of that from our conversation today with Jan and Kate. Yeah, let's identify Ward 8 real needs, and so that we can encourage a clean, safe, friendly, and desirable place to live. Absolutely. That's exactly what we want to do, is to identify those needs up front and early. I want you all to start thinking about that, so that when you go to your ANC meetings, talk to them. I know ANC 8A, which, is my former stomping grounds. We used to do a budget letter all the time about the things we see in our ANC, but we always did it to the council. I think now is the time to do it to the mayor. Like, let's make sure we do those letters, address those letters to the mayor. In fact, I think the last letter, and Michael's jumping on this if you can, I think the last letter we did, I think it was to the mayor. We try to get it to the mayor so that, because we were told before, the mayor is the one that really influences these things. And I think we got some results from that. So I think, yeah, that is true. We did our letter directed to the mayor, but we CC'd all the council members on it. So, Michael, I see you've joined us.
Yes. So we did send that letter to the mayor. We sent it a little bit later in her budgeting process. So she was at that time already in discussions and had, I believe, held most of her community budget meetings. Jen and Kate talked a little bit about those, and some of you may have participated in those budget forums before. And so we sent it a little bit later. And so to your point, we're trying to move that process up more and more, because the earlier we get in the process, the more likely we are to be thought about in the mix, the more likely that is to be baked into the budget that's presented before the council. And so we're really encouraging that, and also encouraging council members to continue or to add some of our asks into their budget letters that they send to the mayor, to make sure that they're included and reinforced in our ask.
Well, that's a great way to tee up what I think we should talk about next, which is our budget survey. And so we've updated it for 20 fiscal year 27, which, talk a little bit about why it's so far in the future. Like, we're not even out of 25 yet. But it's a great opportunity, I think, for us to talk about what the survey looks like. I'm going to try to pull it up so if people can see it as we can walk through it a bit, and then give you all the QR code. You can scan it right now on your screen, no matter if you're watching us on Zoom or if you're watching on YouTube. We can go right now and start to take that survey.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about to the commenter's point earlier about what is the mayor's budget process. I have had the privilege of previously working on behalf of the mayor, in the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services. It meant I was integrally a part of the budget at that time, because how the budget process starts for the mayor, those budget requests come from agencies, because we have to make sure that we're funding what the agencies know, that the work that they know they're going to be doing, and some of the new and innovative initiatives that they've thought of over the year, that they want to kick off. And so the initial ask from the agencies usually start coming around November, December, when budgets actually need to be rolled up from the agencies and go to the deputy mayor's offices, and then go to the actual mayor, so that she has a solid document so that she can start reviewing. And so there are a couple of processes that happen where ideas are presented, as well as programs that might not necessarily be performing as well are presented. And so from that process, we are trying to get baked in. Again, agencies are doing that now in November for FY'27, i.e. the budget process that kicks off in October. They are doing that now until about early January. That is the time in which rolling up a budget to give the mayor their first draft of the budget. And then from there are negotiations that happen with the mayor's budget director. And so the mayor's budget director, Jenny Reed, who then goes through and slices and dices and says, hey, I like what you said here. I think what you said here is great. And then those items get trimmed. And then through our advocacy, things can be changed, moved around, and improved. And so we want to get in that process as early as possible, and that's where our budget survey comes in. And so by hearing your voices and applying and responding to all of these questions that we have in here, we're able to put together an actual budget letter that we will draft with your ideas, and as many enhancements as we can, to make sure that it is a program that when it gets before the mayor's team, they can actually kind of operationalize. And so the main things, Troy, if you want to scroll up to the top for me, please. We start the survey off with kind of the general information. We have a little bit of background here. We've created some categories that are pretty broad, but don't worry. While we put you in categories, we do give you some opportunities to just kind of say what you're looking at and thinking about. And so then we go into some basic demographic information, so we can make sure we know who you are. We want to know where you're living, so we can make sure that as many places in our ward are represented as possible. And we include this information in our letter as well. Zip code is another way of doing that. And then we get into the meat of it. What is the most important issue facing Ward 8 in our city? And then we ask you, what's the second most important issue? And what's the third most important issue? And so you get to choose from a menu, and we encourage you not to choose the same thing over and over again, but actually select different options on each. And that way we can actually say, hey, these are ideas that we've heard from the community, from ANC members, from teachers, from civic associations, from our small businesses, and we can start to put those together into something that works, into some ideas that the mayor could fund and the council can also fund, and we can get passed and see in years to come. But sometimes it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily know all of the language or what to say. We want to work with you on that. We want to know what you want fixed in your community and how. So if you say, hey, I want swimming pools in my community fixed, we want you to just say, fix the swimming pools in my community. And when you fix the swimming pools in my community, um, I want you to make sure that they're able to be opened at this point in time of the year. You can put those types of language, that type of language in here, and we will work on some actual ideas that work out and that the mayor or the council can fund. It could also be, I want more streetlights to be in my community because my community is very dark. Those are ideas that don't necessarily have, to your point, the budget ask and all of those different things, but we will work that out on the back end to have a number together. We also want to talk about your engagement process with the Ward 8 Democrats, as well as the budget process overall. And so it's not necessarily a really long survey, but it does give us a lot of information. And we do close out the survey and ask for your permission to contact you so you can know about the great things that we're doing here at the Ward 8 Democrats, and you have an opportunity to continue to stay engaged with us here at the Ward 8 Democrats. As Troy mentioned earlier, this is our 5th year doing this work. We have consistently been doing it. We are excited to do it every year. It is a labor of love, and we are happy to help be a voice on behalf of the ward. And while we send a letter, that's not all. To the point that Kate and Jen made earlier, we need you all to kind of double back on the back end and show up at the council hearings, show up at the mayor's budget engagement forums, and ask those questions and follow up again and say, hey, did you get our letter? What did you fund? And through those conversations and through that power of presence, we get to see and we start learning and see the change in our community that we all want and need. And so that's a little bit about the budget process, our budget survey, and why we're doing things so early, and how we hope to make a difference for Ward 8 residents and continue to grow as a ward and continue to make sure our voice is represented at the Wilson Building.
Got it. And you're able to see the QR code, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. There's a whole bunch of windows on my screen open. Okay. Yeah,
And
so
I'm even going to test it now.
okay, yeah, let's test it. We did already, but there
Hey.
are iPhones, there are Androids, and there's a lot of stuff in between. So we want to make sure everything works. But Michael, seriously though, thank you for walking, our public through that and the importance of it. And again, scan the QR code right now. You can literally go right to the link there on your mobile device. And type it up. You can also bookmark it in case you say, okay, I need more time to think through some of my thoughts. Bookmark it so you know it's there, and then share it. We want you to share it with your neighbors, share it with your friends and family members who live in the ward, right? We want this to be a very ward specific ask as it has been in the past. But we've changed it. We've tweaked the survey just a little bit so that we can be far more intentional about the top things that we know that the ward want us to advocate on. But then again, you have an opportunity to present things that you care about or things that your neighbors care about. I always say it's not always about us, right? We've gotten, I think, so much into an individualistic type of world now and society where we're always thinking about what we need. And I'm not saying your needs aren't important and they should be elevated. But we also want to remember our neighbor, right? We see the single mom that struggles every day. We see them, with this better bus system, which is nothing but. we see them having to walk further and have to leave early in order to get their child to the bus. What does that mean, right? So we're saying don't just look at what's happening, be an advocate for what's happening in someone else's life, your neighbor. That's the only way we're going to get through this is by working together. And sometimes your neighbor who is struggling isn't on the YouTube or isn't on the Facebook with with the Ward 8 Democrats or here on this Zoom with the Ward 8 Democrats. You are. So that means you can speak up on their behalf as well, because, give them a voice. So remember, it's not just about ourselves, it's also about our neighbors and the things that we know that they need, that the city, that our ward needs. So just remember that when you are taking the budget survey. Last year, we had folks who mentioned that 7D was crumbling and it needed assistance there. We needed either a new building or we needed, uh, major renovations there. And, we've actually got that funded. And that information went into our letter and budget request, and we got that funded. So that's in the budget to be, I think it's a new build, if I'm not mistaken, for 7D, and it's going to actually have more community space there, open to that area, that neighborhood, so people can use it for meetings and for other gatherings. So that's the type of advocacy work that we can do together. Ward 8 Democrats, we're just one piece of the puzzle. But all of you are very much in part of it as well. And again, it means that you have to step up and make sure that you're talking about the things that matter most. Okay. All right. So again, scan the QR code if you like. Thank you, Michael, for dropping the actual link in the chat. We'll do that on YouTube as well. And so scan the QR code and you can go there and start the process. If you want to scan it now, this way you can at least bookmark it in case you want it just to be a little bit more thoughtful. That's fine too, but scan the QR code so you have it with you. And I did want to mention that we know there are some people in our community who are hurting just from cuts, from the fear of what was happening with SNAP. People have lost their jobs, of course. And so, Michael, if you can post it to everybody, and so that Nat can see the link, not just the host and panelists. Thanks for that, Nat. And so we know that there's
I don't
some
have
people
that
who are
ability.
hurting.
My
Okay, all right.
apology.
All right, Nat, give me a second. I'll do it in just a second. And so we know that there are people who need some help. The council member is having his annual turkey giveaway. It's going to be at Union Temple right over in Anacostia. Those are the sponsors down at the bottom of all that. If you have questions or uh, just need to reach out to the office, Sheila Bunn, who's chief of staff, her email address is on the bottom there at sbunn@dccouncil.gov. But again, this is a great opportunity for those who might need a little bit of help during the holidays. It is Ward 8 specific, so it's going to be registration is going to be required. Again, this is where you can help your neighbors if you know they're not savvy. Just help the neighbor as well who isn't terribly savvy on devices to register. And so help your neighbors. You know they might need a little bit of help there, and so help them out. Uh, the acceptable residency requirement documents, and you see those there on your screen. Essentially, they want you to be a Ward 8 resident so that those here get a chance to get those, get the services that they need. Again, it's going to be at Union Temple on Tuesday. Starts at noon, goes until 4 or until everything is done. And that web address there, so go ahead and screenshot this as well. That web address is Ward 8 Turkey Giveaway 2025.eventbrite.com. There's no QR code for that, but you can go right to that web address. It takes you right to Eventbrite and you can register. And I think it's one registration per household. And trust me, you don't want more than one turkey anyway. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. All right. But anyway, that's happening on Tuesday. And certainly want to give you all an opportunity, if you didn't get a chance to see this slide earlier, to see it one more time. With other ways that you can engage with the Ward 8 Democrats. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order before we close out? You can use the chat feature, or you can use the raise your hand feature, and we return you folks to your Saturday afternoon. There's something in the Q&A. Can we get? Oh yeah, Nat. Let me get that to you. Right. So I want to get the link to everyone. All right. So Nat, tell me if you can see that link. Oh, Daryl, you're here? Okay. Daryl's here, our treasurer. We're going to go ahead and approve our financial reports for October. Daryl, go ahead and take it away.
Good afternoon, Ward 8. I'm Daryl Ross, Treasurer of the Ward 8 Democrats, and I'm presenting the Treasurer's Report for October 2025. We opened the month with a balance of $16,783.83. We had total revenue of $20. We had expenses of 80 cents. So the excess of the revenue over the expenses was $19.20. We ended the month of October with a balance of $16,803.03. At this time, if anybody has any questions, you can use the raise your hand function, or you can put the question in the Q&A or the chat.
I don't see any thoughts, any questions, any comments, anything. And so let's go ahead and move it.
All right, I move that we accept the Treasurer's Report for the Ward 8 Democrats for October 2025, subject to audit.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Further discussion? Further discussion? Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. It's the opinion of the chair that the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of Ward 8 Democrats.
Welcome.
Day in and day out. I know I tell you that in private, but I want to make sure I say it in public as well.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that's any other business that we need to share. Anything else for the good of the order before we close out? So I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, I think it's all done. Okay, well then let's go ahead and close us out. So I want to thank Jennifer Budoff and Kate Coventry for spending time with us here in Ward 8. Thank you for helping us understand how we can show up early, show up informed, and show up stronger together when it comes to preparing for the fiscal year 27 budget. We don't want to go into this budget season begging for anything. We want to go into this budget season with expectancy about what is ours and what we deserve. And we want to make sure that we are prepared. So make sure that if you haven't had a chance to, if you just joined us, go back and watch the replay on YouTube after we conclude so that you can better understand how to be prepared. We will share some of the resources. There was a great slide deck from the DC Fiscal Policy Institute that came from Kate. We will put that up on our website the next couple of days. Give me at least a day or so to do it. I'm in school, so I gotta work on that. But we'll get that up so people can see the great information there. And again, reach out to Kate, reach out to Jennifer about questions you have about the budget, or Jennifer mentioned there is the DC Council budget.com website, which has everything that you need to know about the budget process, especially once the budget comes from the mayor and gets to the council. And most importantly, remember that right now, because we're early and we want to be early, is that we should spend this time reaching out to the mayor, to the mayor's agencies, bringing our matters, bringing our issues, our proposals to their attention. This is the time to do it. And then once it moves from this process, there's budget, it's performance oversight, which we know is beginning now. And then, of course, we have the hearings coming up in the springtime. But let's start the process early. Let's get it baked in. I think we heard that word, that phrase a couple of times. Let's get it baked in now so that we can continue to fight for it in the next steps ahead. So again, I want to thank them for being here and for engaging us around the budget process. Take that survey. We will put that link up again, put the QR code up again. Make sure you get your ideas in. We're starting the process early because, as my grandmother used to say, the early bird gets the worm. And so, yeah, we're going to be early. I want to also just say as we close out, happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Listen, I know the holidays can be a little tough, especially when you were missing a loved one. I know exactly how that feels when the room feels a little different, when the person is missing from the table around the holidays. But I want to encourage you around this. Don't do Thanksgiving alone. Call someone up, call up that crazy friend, call up that hilarious cousin, that auntie, that uncle, that family member, that neighbor. Check on your neighbors as well. Make sure they're good. If they need help registering for a turkey giveaway, which is what I mentioned earlier, the council member is doing, do that too. But just don't do Thanksgiving alone. We have so much to be thankful for. And I know it doesn't always feel that way, but it's true. Also, I think busboys and poets, they're having a meal, a Thanksgiving meal with the community on Thanksgiving for free. And so if money is a little tight this year, or maybe you feel like you're lonely, you're not. There is a place where you can go and be engaged around Thanksgiving. Again, don't do Thanksgiving alone. You can also help serve people. There are so many people who need help around this time of year. Service always makes me feel good, so hopefully it will help you feel good as well. But just don't do Thanksgiving alone. All right. I'm going to put out a list of those locations around the DMV on my IG now and throughout the week. So happy early Thanksgiving to all of you. We'll be back next month with our annual Kwanzaa holiday celebration. So stay tuned for that. We're locking down the details on that. It's going to be a big feast, which means we want to invite everyone to come and be part of the Canera. And, so stay tuned for that. We'll post those up on our channels. And so until next time, I want you to stay active, stay loud, stay Ward 8 strong, of course, stay blessed, and have a great Thanksgiving week ahead. Be safe, everybody. Take care. God bless.